Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the connection between your gut and your mood, the way you live life, the way basically your gut is your second brain. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that for a sec?
So your gut is 80% of your immune system. So really with anything, um, from what I've studied and what I believe and what I learn is it really does start with the gut. The gut brain connection. I mean, one great example is if you think about a lemon and you cut into the lemon and you smell the lemon, like you can start to kind of like salivate and like your taste buds react to that. So um, just that aspect of the power of your brain doing something like that. But your gut and your brain send signals to each other all the time, and you know, think about like that gut feeling that you might have on something, and then it could just be a thought. Like you could have a thought, and then you can have that gut feeling.
Yeah.
So those are just kind of like examples of the gut brain connection.
Yeah. So the same way that our brain influences the sensations we have in our gut, what's happening inside of our gut is influencing what's happening inside of our brain. So the way that I've understood it, the way that I think about it, as well as like, I think it's something like 80% of what actually happens in your brain originates in the gut and it comes back up. And I also like to think about it. I work with a lot of people who have anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
and the first thing is, well, what are you putting inside of your body?
Mm-hmm.
Because what you're putting inside of your body is going to change the chemicals that are inside of your brain, and it's
Yeah.
going to change your endocrine system. So the endocrine system is the hormonal system. What's happening with your hormones? And those are hormones like cortisol with stress and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, what's your
And also
experience? Go
also your
ahead.
microbiome. I mean, when you're stressed out, your digestion actually shuts down because
Yeah.
think about back in the day when we had to, fight or flight. Digestion is not going to be number one priority. So just imagine if you have constant stress over time and your digestion is not working optimally. It's going to change your microbiome, which is the organisms in your gut. They are like what health is. So, stress changes your microbiome in your gut. And over time, serotonin can be low and the GABA can be low. You can also, the tight junctions in your gut can become loose and cause leaky gut, which then
Hmm.
becomes systemic inflammation in the body.
Yeah. So if I'm watching this and I'm trying to, we need to figure out why we're not having hair growth, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm watching this right now and I'm experiencing hair loss, what's the first thing that I need to do?
The first thing is diet. You don't have to start with AIP. It can be a really strict diet. I actually don't really it long term. Essentially, it's an elimination diet. So you can start by just eliminating maybe gluten because that is inflammatory, or dairy. And when I say eliminate gluten, I don't mean like have the gluten-free cookies all the time. Like there can be, you know, basically just have a whole foods diet. Um, be conscious of what you're putting in your body and how it fuels you and how you feel. um, Make sure you're moving. You don't have to exercise. I mean, I'm a personal trainer, and um, you know but that doesn't mean you have to go do boot camp or you know run 3 miles a day. It could just be
Yeah.
walking around your block. It could be 5 minutes of yoga. So just, I would say, just slowly add things in, because I know it can be overwhelming. There's so much information, so many changes we can make. But I would say definitely start with the gut, because that is where your immune system, 80% of your immune system is. So that is really the foundation of health.
Yeah. And Benji was just asking how to cope with stress. And I think that you've touched on two really good things. The number one is we want to be mindful of what we are doing with our bodies. So we want to be mindful of what we're putting in, and we want to move it. Obviously, I'm a yoga therapist. My answer is always going to come back to movement and breath, using your breath to come into the rest and digest away from the stress. But like, we don't want to go so in one direction that we actually end up causing ourselves stress because we're trying so hard to stick to a diet or stick to a regime type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stress is part of life. I mean, you can't avoid it all the time. You know, I think figuring out where your triggers are and learning coping mechanisms to help with that. But I think it's hard to say, you know, well, just don't stress, just meditate, you know, like those are all great things. But I think having the awareness of, oh, okay, I feel stressed. And you probably do a lot, you know, with that. So I definitely believe it's being aware of the stress, finding ways to manage it.
Yeah.
So then you're in a constant state of stress, and that is what is the problem, is just being in a constant state of stress, because we're not supposed to be like that. We're supposed to, okay, we're stressed, what do we do? And then that's it. But when we have these thoughts of, you know, constant things, you know, maybe trauma that happened to you, you know, then you're basically putting your body in this state of stress constantly.
Yeah. And that's kind of like what we were speaking about, is trauma's effect. Because trauma's effect. So how would I know? I'm thinking about this as watching this, as if I'm someone watching it. How would I know? Because a lot of us, if we're experiencing hair loss, we're either told that it's for stress and it's specifically caused by stress, or we're not sure, either because we have not been told that, maybe we don't have a diagnosis, or because we specifically have been told that it's not because of stress. Stress and hair loss is a really, really touchy subject, as is trauma and hair loss. So keeping that in mind, and keeping in mind that everyone has a different experience, when we look at it through the lens of this holistic healing, what do you believe, what do you see the link as trauma to hair loss? How does one cause the other? And how would I know if my hair loss was caused by trauma? And how would I know that by healing that trauma, I may see regrowth?
Yeah. The tricky thing about autoimmune conditions or alopecia, and I don't know if it's because I have alopecia that I feel like it's one of the trickiest ones.
Yeah.
And it is because, you know, hair grows in cycles. So sometimes you may not necessarily know what may have what may have caused your hair to go into remission. I don't believe that there's one set of things. I think it's a combination of the diet, the exercise, the mindset, detoxing. It's treating the body as a whole and not just separately, because they're all linked together. So I can eat kale all day and exercise, but if I wake up every morning and say, well, then like it's imbalanced. The kale is important as mindset. One of the best things that I did for myself is, even before I had alopecia, I had depression and anxiety. When I lost all my hair, it kind of forced me to kind of figure it out, because I was doing everything and I still was I was still missing something. And so the mindset was really, really big. And I would say finding a therapist that can help navigate your feelings and help you discover the root cause of maybe your thoughts or your feelings. Does that
Yeah.
answer? Yeah.
Yeah, so much. And that's so in line. Like, I really do believe that. I believe that your hair loss, what I believe, and this is me, is that it occurs with a greater purpose. It's calling attention to something else. It kind of needs to happen. And finding meaning out of that is a part of recovering from the trauma of it. If that meaning is that it's asking you to clean up your diet or pursue a different life or clear out emotions that you've had kind of sticking with you, causing you anxiety, causing you depression, and that's the meaning of it, you know. I really like that, and it also makes me want to get your opinion on something that a lot of what I do and what I teach is about acceptance of your hair loss, right? Acceptance of yourself, self-acceptance, and from that self-acceptance, finding acceptance in your community. So when you're working or when you're working towards and you have a goal in mind, like I would like my hair back, like that's what I want.
Yeah.
What's your experience been with finding acceptance along that journey?
So for me, I had to find a bigger reason than just hair to do what I was doing, because I do believe that we can heal. I do believe that we can go into remission. But I also believe that, yeah, could you do all the things and you still not have hair? Like, you know, sometimes you just don't know. And that's just the world, you know, and I feel like you can't be so dependent on, well, I'm only going to eat healthy or exercise or get my mind right if I can get my hair back. Like, I've got to find something deeper, something more long lasting. So for me, I had to say, well, I know I feel great when I'm healthy and I exercise, and wow, the therapy is helping me get to these self-limiting beliefs that are getting on my nerves. You know,
Yeah.
so it's, I really feel like with alopecia or even, you know, any autoimmune condition is you find your why outside of maybe the direct issue. Because
Find
I
the
feel,
thing that it's calling to.
would you say?
Like find the thing that I think of it almost like a pimple. Like if the hair loss is the head of the pimple and it's telling you, oh, the pimple is here, find that root that is causing the inflammation, right? And find that thing that will cause you to kind of heal. Yeah.
Yeah. And find meaning in it, I think is really important, because I know if I wouldn't have lost my hair, I may have never became an integrative health practitioner to help others. I would have never dealt with my childhood trauma. I would have never known what functional medicine or holistic, like I would have never probably discovered all the great things that I have discovered. So even though,
you would be a mother as well.
Yeah, because I'm able to help my kids on a whole different level.
Yeah.
So I guess it's finding beauty in the hard things.
Yeah. Benji also asked if going for a full head shave would be an option, and I wanted to address that. I think that if going for a full head shave is going to help you in that acceptance and help you kind of feel better and take control, yeah, go for it. Like don't second guess it. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I definitely say I feel like you know when you're kind of ready for it. do it on your own terms. Don't feel like you have to. Just do what you feel is right in your heart, and honoring that is the best thing. Like, I used to feel like I was hiding because I wear wigs, but I also feel like they're like an accessory. So, and I know I like the way I look with wigs. Also, I have a really tiny head, so I think some people, some bald people, they just have perfect heads. Me, not so. So, I had to get over feeling like I was not being true, you know, because I chose not to show up bald.
Yeah. Can we just like, whoever, I know that there are a couple people watching, I know that people will watch the replay, but like, amen to that. That is the biggest thing that I feel people, that I help people overcome and that I see happen is that and I've had it myself as well. You're like, oh, there's a certain way that I need to manage my hair loss. We're on Instagram right now. We scroll past 1 million people who are managing their hair loss in a specific way, whether that be accepting it and not looking into the cause, or or healing it with a diet, or going to all the specialists versus not going. Some people get diagnosed 18 times. Some people don't get diagnosed at all. Some people shave their head immediately, and some people never ever do it, and some people buy thousands of wigs, and some people don't want any. There's no way to do it. And in life, we have to choose what is best for us based on us. This is the journey to strengthen that muscle. And your choice will always be like the truest choice to you. That is your true, authentic self.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I know it's definitely hard. Anyway, you know, whatever you do, I feel like you're right. It's not right or wrong, and all of it's hard, you know.
Yeah. And it's interesting to find the beliefs that go there.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
So I wanted to touch on a little bit about the handout.
Yeah, we kind of derailed, so let's come back to it. Why don't you, what do we need to touch on here?
I think
This is
we
really
talked about stress and how it affects the gut. We talked about, you know, how trauma, you know, imprints in the body, and studies have shown, I have a little bit of notes here, but studies have shown that those who have suffered trauma in earlier life have a distinct different gut microbiome.
Yeah.
So if you've suffered any like childhood trauma, you have an increased risk of autoimmune conditions as well.
Super interesting. Yeah, that's really, really awesome. I'm going to Google that study to share it.
Yeah, and I can get it as well.
Yeah, please do.
I talked about the gut-brain connection. The health of your brain affects the health of your gut, and vice versa.
Would you mind talking? Is this, when you're talking about what you've just mentioned there? Is this the epigenetics, where your environment changes your genetics?
No, that's separate.
Okay. What can you explain a little bit about how our environment will change our genetics?
That is epigenetics.
Okay. And how does that work?
So you know, DNA being predisposed to something, right? Maybe it's part of our genes, but basically with epigenetics, something has to pull the trigger. So maybe our genes are the gun that's loaded, but something had to pull the trigger. So that's when like environmental factors come into play. So maybe diet or toxins or trauma, that would be an example of the epigenetics.
Okay, so this is like what you and I were speaking about, where for my example, it's just the closest one I have, so we'll use it. I have autoimmune alopecia, and there was an event. There was a couple events. Every time that my alopecia has gone to like the next level, it's been a certain amount of time after a stressful or a traumatic event in my life, right? Like the first time I lost my eyebrows, car accident. Second time I started losing my eyebrows and
Mm,
eyelashes. Eyelashes was post-COVID. Eyebrows, arm hair, my legs was actually after a death in my life, and that was really traumatic.
yeah.
So that explains that I was born with the autoimmune predisposition, and
Hmm.
then the event happened post trigger slash trauma.
Yeah. And we do see this a lot, where you have a certain trauma or you have a certain exposure. I mean, when I lost all my hair, I had a horrible pregnancy, had my baby, and my body,
Mm-hmm.
think of it as a bucket of water. And we put things in there, maybe trauma and toxins and lack of sleep, stress,
Right.
anxiety. You have all in the bucket. Well, over time, they become overflown. Oh, they
Yeah.
overflown. That's the word. They overflow, and that's when disease happens.
Yeah.
Um,
And it can be minuscule or it can be large. Each person is individual, and we don't necessarily. There's no timeline
right.
either.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, you never know how, there is no timeline. It's not like, okay, if you keep this up for 5 years, you'll have disease. I mean, sometimes it could be your whole life that you've been doing different things or have been happening, and then your bucket becomes um
Yeah. Oh,
and one of the things I really try to stress with getting to the root cause, um it is different for everybody, because we're all about individual. So my reasons or my triggers may be different than yours or anybody else. So we can't you can't really compare. Sometimes I get frustrated when people are like, well, this is what I did and it works for me. And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean that it will work for me, because we're different
thank
people.
you
We
for
have
saying
different,
that.
yeah, it's frustrating. I mean, I know they're probably coming from a good place because it helped them, but we can't put everybody in the same box.
And this is why we have professionals like you to actually look. I find that difficult sometimes when, you see it and they're trying, but I think that specifically for this, speak with a professional. And if you're got to this point in the live or the replay and you're thinking, oh yeah, sounds like this would be a really good moment to like reach out to Val, speak to her, speak with a professional,
Yeah.
find a professional to actually go into what that means. Because when we end up in this um, Googling, YouTubing, Instagramming, looking at other people's stories and experiences, it's reassuring, but it's not addressing you as the unique individual that you are.
Right. And
Yeah.
I'm happy to help. Like, I feel like I wish I had me 5 years ago, because there's not a lot about alopecia in a natural, holistic, functional medicine approach. In general, it's just hard to find anyways, but specifically for alopecia, it's hard. And I just want people to see that there is another side to it. Not that this is the best side or the only side. And maybe you've done all the things and they didn't work, but that doesn't mean that it may not help somebody else, or maybe help your family member, or just bring awareness on one thing that will help you.
Yeah. We're more empowered with more information. Yeah. Also, Benji asked of here that is acceptance also by a partner important? I wanted to touch on that for a sec. We are biologically engineered to look for acceptance in a partner. It is a part of keeping us safe. It is primal. There's no getting around it. When you find more self-acceptance, that is mirrored in your relationship, right? So when we see that our partner is not accepting us, usually if it's a secure relationship, if it's not abusive, it is because a part of us, a part of our shadow, is not accepting us. And when we show up secure, empowered, then that's what our partner reflects back onto us. Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on that. That's a whole different topic. so we'll have to go into it later on, and I speak a lot. So yeah, but I just wanted to make sure that Benji got his question answered. And I guess we, yeah, what else do we need to go over from the handout before I post that?
I just really like what you said, and it makes me think about how, you know, we talked about it a little bit, but how trauma gets stored in the body.
Yeah.
And our bodies aren't able to be balanced or function effectively if we don't work through those. Do you agree?
Yeah, our body is, so a couple of things. So trauma is anything that your nervous system cannot regulate in the moment. If you think about a car accident, and you have a small car accident, right? Somebody like rear ends you. Possibly when you come out of that, you're feeling shaky, right? So when you come out of that, you're feeling shaky, and what your body is doing, and you'll see this in animals, when you shake after a traumatic event, or you get angry, you shake, right? This is actually your body expelling that trauma. It's expelling that energy, because the energy came into the body and then it needs to expel it, right?
Yeah.
So if you ever look at a dog or a cat or some animal, any animal, and they have an interaction with another animal and it kind of leaves them a bit, they'll go like this, they'll shake, right? We all have this shaking response. That's them, and then they just move on with their day. They shake it off and then they move on with their day. Humans are the same. We're all primates, we all do this. So there are shaking meditations that you do in order to elicit that response in the body and move it on. So anything that our nervous system cannot process in the moment is stored in our body and is defined as trauma. So this might look at, like, you might know this has happened when you react to something. For example, your partner doesn't respond to you quickly, like they leave you on red or something. And it's not a big deal because they're at work, but you're like, that's a really big deal for me. Like, what the hell? Like, you're feeling that in your body. You start to get really angry and sad. What you have triggered there is an abandonment trauma, because it's reminding you of a time that maybe somebody didn't respond to your needs, right? And you might remember it, you might not remember it. It depends on you. So we're feeling it in the body, and it's like our body gets transported back to that moment when it received those cues. Your emotional and your energetic body gets stuck in that moment. And until we can clear out the energy from that moment, we can't actually release that trauma and bring the body back into the present day, where the present day self understands that your partner is at work or is having a nap or is playing PlayStation and just didn't respond. That's like a very day-to-day example. It is natural for the body. It's natural. We're actually doing it all the time without noticing. You may have noticed, like, if you think about just day to day, when you go to the gym and you're like really angry and you just kind of like get out your pent up frustration, you're actually releasing from the whole day because you weren't able to release when you were in the board meeting with your boss, right? Little mini trauma, you release it. And it gets bigger depending on the scenario, depending on the meaning that person connects to the scenario. Our bodies are literally created to do that. So as we spend more time in our bodies, as we become adults, and as we stretch our comfort zones, it becomes productive to consciously address the trauma that we have stored and that we continue to store, and look for ways to release that. That can be through therapy, it can be through meditating, it can be through going and doing like emotional embodiment, which is a lot of the work that I do. It can be through going and doing a shaking meditation. It could be through like going and smashing things at one of those smash yards. It could be through Reiki. So many healing modalities. But what we're doing is just we're moving it through. Does that make sense to everyone? Does that make sense to you, Benji? Tell me if I'm getting that right.
That was
Does anyone have any questions? What was that?
I said that was a great explanation of that. A book I wanted to recommend, I don't know if I already said it, but The Body Keeps Score. Have you read that?
It's in my Kindle right now. I've read the sample and I've read little excerpts here and there, but I'm going to link it in this because, like, literally one of the best books. If you're interested in reading about that, yeah.
Yeah. It's long,
yeah,
but it's a good book. It really talks about putting everything together that we just talked about in more detail.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for speaking with us. I'm going to go ahead and share this on Instagram. I'm actually also going to put it up on, I think, my website, and use the links that you spoke about. So
if you want me
thank you
to add
for
your website to it, I can add.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's chat about that. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
thank you for joining us.
All right. See you, everybody. Let me know if you have questions.
Bye.
Bye.